All wars have weaknesses, blind spots unseen on maps or in frontline reports. They are silent cracks that slowly widen until everything breaks. This war has them too. Today we'll break them down. Ukraine and Russia both stand on the edge, appearing to battle with tanks, drones, and rockets. But really, it's about endurance. Who will last and who will break first? And who has the greater weakness that could destroy them? Sit down. This is the key part. We have identified the biggest problem of each country, a problem that could decide the war. Ukraine is at risk of running out of soldiers. Russia risks running out of money. One side faces an exhausted front, the other an overheated economy. Today, we'll compare which weakness is more fatal and who is closer to defeat. You're watching Beyond Borders. Let's begin. Ukraine has held the front for nearly 4 years, relying on its people's strength rather than equipment. And these people are now its most precious and most endangered resource, and also the biggest current problem that could bring about its defeat. On paper, the Ukrainian army has an impressive size. President Zelensky said in January 2025, he counts about 880,000 soldiers. Hundreds of thousands more serve in the National Guard, Border Service, and as volunteers. That might seem like a huge force, but the numbers are deceiving. Most of these people are not sitting in the trenches. Only some are combat infantry. About 100,000 to 120,000 men are on the front lines daily. That's less than the number of assault units Russia has in Donbass. Russia's personnel base is much larger. Russian active forces are estimated at 1.1 to 1.3 million soldiers, with reserves in the hundreds of thousands to millions. Western and Ukrainian estimates of deployment in Ukraine itself speak of several 100,000 soldiers directly in the conflict zone. The Ukrainian command cited figures near 600,000. The result is clear. Russia can sustain pressure and replace losses, but Ukraine must preserve every soldier. It's clear that the core of Ukraine's problem isn't the size of the army itself. That could potentially be sufficient. The issue is with the infantry. They lack those willing to crawl in mud, hold trenches, and attack enemy positions. Technology, drones, or artillery can't fully replace that. And this part of the army wears out fastest. At the war's start, people discussed rotations, rest, and caring for soldiers. In the first months, there was a rule that units shouldn't spend more than 5 days on the front line. After 5 days, they were supposed to rest, get some sleep, and recover. Today, that sounds like a memory from another era. Rotation is nearly impossible on the front's hottest sections. Soldiers remain there for weeks, months, or even a year. Reaching the positions takes days, and traveling to the front is often more dangerous than fighting itself, as drones monitor all movement. Journalist and soldier Yuri Butusov reported on a unit that held their position for over 200 days without a break. Its commander spent 2 winters, 2 springs, and a summer there, 11 months without rest. He wasn't alone. Deep State described 2 soldiers who held the defense for 165 days straight. They attempted to rotate them out 30 times, but snipers stopped them each time. They only escaped their position because of the fog. These aren't remarkable stories. This is the reality on the Ukrainian front. Soldiers fight in trenches under constant fire, lacking hygiene, sleep, and contact with family, sometimes for months. If wounded, their survival chances drop sharply because frontline evacuation takes a long time. A soldier waited 33 days for rescue before being pulled out with drone assistance. Such a long stay in combat isn't heroism, but proof of a huge problem. The Ukrainian army simply lacks people. Commanders discuss situations where just 8 men must defend nearly a kilometer of front. Drones and artillery help but can't replace manpower. Official losses aren't disclosed. President Zelensky admitted to 46,000 dead in February, but the real numbers are higher. Projects tracking obituaries report more than 70,000 dead and tens of thousands missing. An entire generation is missing from both the army and the country. The problem is made worse by the high age limit for mobilization. You have to be 25 years old to be called up to the army. In a country with falling birth rates and an aging population, the reserve is rapidly depleting. The government fears lowering it, not out of unwillingness, but due to fear of resistance. Kyiv realizes mass mobilization could cause unrest, so the war depends on the older generation. About men pushed to their mental and physical limits. Every additional month means more fatigue, less motivation, and a slow but unstoppable wear and tear. Ukraine has a determination the world has never seen. But even determination has its limits. If mobilization and rotation systems can't be fundamentally changed, the front may collapse. Not because the enemy will break through, but because no one will be left to defend the lines. That is its weakness. Not a military, but a demographic one. Silent, unseen, yet decisive. Next, we'll examine the other side, at Russia, which does have people, but its economy is starting to break under its own weight. Russia, an economy on the edge. It seems that Russia has the advantage. It has enough people. The factories are running. The army is being replenished. But all of this depends on one thing: money. And that money is running out. And that's exactly where the main problem of Putin's war machine lies. 3 years of war have hurt the Russian economy more than the Kremlin admits. Outwardly, it appears stable: low unemployment, gross domestic product growth, and tank and missile production. Behind this facade is an overheating system, with the war now driving the entire economy. The arms industry is practically the only sector that is growing today. Civilian production is stagnant, services are failing, and inflation has risen above 8% after summer. The Russian budget is in the red. The deficit is 5.7 trillion rubles, about 2.6% of gross domestic product. That's 5 times more than the Kremlin had planned. Former Deputy Finance Minister Sergei Alexashenko says the civilian economy is in recession. Military production drives everything, funded by increasingly risky bank loans. A Harvard analysis found that up to 23% of corporate loans now go to arms companies. That's roughly $190 billion, meaning Russian banks are full of ticking time bombs. Ukrainian drone attacks are also contributing to the situation, hitting the very heart of the Russian economy: oil refineries. In just the course of 2025, they knocked out about 17% of the country's refining capacity. The war Moscow claimed was distant has now come home. In many regions, including Crimea, a rationing system was introduced: a maximum of 20 liters of fuel per car. Smaller gas stations in the south of the country were closing due to a shortage of gasoline. On social media, footage of long lines of cars waiting to refuel was spreading. Fuel prices have spiked, and even Crimean Chief Sergei Aksyonov acknowledged the issue. Combined with new sanctions and foreign currency outflow, this pressures the carefully crafted image of Russian stability. Oil and gas revenues are down, but expenses are up. Putin is funding the war with internal loans. He makes banks and state companies buy war bonds. The National Welfare Fund, meant as a reserve for hard times, is being drained rapidly. With no more borrowing options, the Ministry of Finance is increasing taxes. Value-added tax is set to increase from 20 to 22% starting in 2026. The economy is in a vicious cycle. Higher taxes hurt consumption, reducing state revenue. High loan interest rates are holding back businesses, which are already surviving only thanks to government contracts. Real growth has stalled, and the Russian central bank says the country is headed for a recession. The Russian economy survives mainly due to the regime's force, price controls, propaganda, and fear. It's an economy in wartime mode. It works as long as the fighting continues, but the longer the fighting goes on, the faster it gets exhausted. According to analysts from the Center for Analysis and Strategy in Europe, Russia can afford to finance the war for several more years, but not forever. Experts warn stagnation could last a decade. The state's public debt is only about 17% of gross domestic product, but this number is misleading. The hidden debt is bigger because it's moved to banks and state-owned enterprises. So, in Russia's case, the economy isn't collapsing, but it's slowly suffocating. And that's a difference that determines the timing. To be clear, Ukraine isn't doing well either. Its economy has dropped by more than 30% since 2022. Every month it needs billions of dollars from abroad to keep its state budget running. Half of its spending goes to defense. Unlike Russia, Ukraine relies on aid, not repression. Aid is still coming, though uncertain. Meanwhile, Russia hopes to outlast them. It increasingly seems the economy stays together only because it hasn't fully collapsed yet, which is its weakness. Not on the battlefield, but in accounting books and banks, not trenches. When it bursts, both the economy and the image of strength Putin built over a decade will collapse. Next chapter, we'll examine who has more time in this war and what endurance really means. Who has more time? This war is a race, not about tanks, but about who breaks first. Ukraine fights to survive, Russia to preserve its regime. Time moves for both sides like sand in an hourglass, with every grain costing something. Ukraine is running out of people. Russia is running out of money, but this doesn't happen suddenly. Exhaustion builds gradually until it reaches a breaking point. Militarily, Russia currently has the advantage. It has more men, a stronger industrial base, and infrastructure that can mass produce ammunition. Estimates show Russian industry produces over 2 million artillery shells annually, while the West supplies Ukraine with far fewer in the same time. This imbalance creates pressure that gradually turns into a strategic advantage. Ukraine, on the other hand, relies on quality and precision. Drones, satellite data, and coordinated strikes use Western technology, but resources are limited. Every tank, every missile, every shell means a decision about which place to defend and which to let fall. In this environment, war tests endurance. Who lasts longer? Society, the economy, or the army? War isn't just about the front line, it's about replacing losses. Russia can replace people, but not quality. Losses are huge, with estimates of 250,000 to 350,000 killed. Ukraine has fewer, but each of these lives is hard to replace. On the other hand, Ukraine has the advantage of support, and even though Western aid fluctuates, it still keeps coming. United States, European, and British funds are keeping Kyiv afloat. In 2025 alone, more than $40 billion came in direct subsidies and military aid. Russia lacks that luxury. Its economy is closed, reliant on its own resources and a few allies like Iran, North Korea, and China. China does help with technology and components, but avoids directly violating sanctions, so it doesn't jeopardize its trade with the West. Paradoxically, both systems can endure. Ukraine survives due to external aid, Russia due to its lack of political opposition. However, neither pillar is permanent. Aid may slow and fear in Russia may fade, so time favors no one. It's a struggle between two exhausted organisms, each trying to stay alive longer than the other. If this war drags on, Russia will likely endure longer. If it becomes a sprint of sudden crises, Ukraine has a chance to survive. The next chapter will focus on those unpredictable turning points. About black swans that arrive when no one expects them. What can change everything? Wars rarely end as generals expect, as Ukraine's history shows. You can have a strategy, a budget, and the support of allies, but sometimes a single event is enough, and everything turns around. It's called a black swan, an unpredictable twist that changes the entire war. What could it be now? The first possibility is internal collapse in Russia, not a revolution, but a breakdown of power. Intensifying disputes among the elites, failure of the banking system, regional chaos. Chaos. A regime that relies on fear is only strong as long as people obey it. If loyalty breaks, Putin's vertical will collapse faster than anyone can replace it. A second black swan might be a political shift in the United States. If Donald Trump's already fickle support were to definitively turn away from Kyiv, Ukraine would lose its oxygen. The war may end from exhaustion, not defeat. The White House ceremony is as threatening for Kyiv as a Russian breakthrough on the front. The third scenario is technological, new weapons that can disrupt the balance. Ukraine has proven it can innovate despite limited resources. Drones hitting Russian refineries far behind the front lines prove that. If it managed to develop something even more precise, faster, and cheaper, it could regain the strategic initiative. However, there is also the opposite possibility that Russia will deploy something it hasn't used so far, a new type of missile, hypersonic weapons, or massive cyber attacks. The war could also reach areas not yet part of the battlefield. Into cyberspace, energy networks, and the media. Another factor is the world's fatigue. As the war drags on, the West pays less attention. Aid becomes routine, and reports of attacks lose their shock value. If support runs out, Ukraine will be left alone. Any of these events could change the balance of power within a few weeks. None of them can be planned. Each is possible. History shows wars rarely end logically. The turning point comes suddenly from a place that seemed insignificant until then. And when it happens, all previous calculations no longer apply. And finally, we come to the point of this video. We'll talk about who currently is closer to winning the war. Conclusion: who is winning? Right now, Russia appears closer to victory. It's not winning on the front lines, but it can last longer. Its economy is stagnating, but hasn't collapsed. Despite sanctions and lost markets, Moscow can still fund the war. And according to analysts, this will remain the case for several more years. Russia's budget deficit is high, but still manageable. Roughly 2.6% of gross domestic product, with national debt still low at about 18%. The country can continue to borrow because it has a large domestic market that keeps it afloat, and its economy is gradually changing. From a model based on oil and gas to an economy driven by military production, the military industry has become the new engine that keeps the state going, even if everything else slows down. Russia isn't thriving, but it will endure. Endure may be the most important word of this war. Even with Western support, these resources are limited. Every further mobilization runs into the fatigue of society, which is already becoming more and more apparent. Just in the problems, the authorities have recruiting new people into the army. Every delayed decision by the Allies has its price, and every month of fighting costs billions that Kiev has to find somewhere. The war is becoming a contest between two weary sides, one with more people, the other with greater resolve. One side has resources, the other has purpose. But war is unpredictable. A single event could change everything. A black swan. An unexpected twist can change the rules, making predictions pointless. Anyone who claims to know how this war will end is lying to themselves. But one thing is certain: Vladimir Putin is relying on things proceeding as usual. That the West will tire, Ukraine will weaken, and time will favor him. Yet, history is often unpredictable, of changing the plans of those who are too sure of themselves. If you like the video, I would appreciate a like, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next ones I'm working on. You can support my work through gratitude, and if you want to help the video reach more people, click on praise. I appreciate it.